Disruptors and Curious Minds. What's happening? Jeremy Gilbertson, Mark Fielding. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to another episode of Thinking on Paper. We're going off our normal script per se to do some interesting things and try some new stuff. We're gonna call
I'm
this.
nervous.
Yeah, a little nervous, a little shaky. It's good. It's good to be a little bit nervous whenever you're trying something new. And if you're not nervous, you're not pushing the boundaries, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, I'm wearing that, like, my heart monitor says my heart rate is racing into the mid 70s. We have no guest.
What are we gonna do?
What are we going to do? This is a good question. We should probably do something though.
Absolutely. Well, hey, welcome to our LinkedIn audience. Welcome to our YouTube audience, and welcome to our newly acquired volume.com audience. Hope everyone's doing well today. What I wanted to do, it's always, backstories are always pretty interesting, at least to me anyway. I'm not saying our backstory is going to be tremendously interesting, but hopefully it'll be a good nugget. So the way this whole thing came together, Mark, if you remember, you and I reached out to you, I think, on LinkedIn. I saw that you were doing some writing on Web3 stuff. At the time, I was doing a lot of writing on Web3 stuff. And I was just like, hey, we should connect, because it was the time when Web3 was really new. And, you know, the people that were really curious about it were finding their ways to each other. We jumped on a call, went through, had a great chat. I would love to just hear your takeaways of meeting. Do you guys use the term bloke? Meeting a bloke like me?
Yeah, we use
out
it.
of
Bloke.
out of random. And you know, what was your initial takeaway, and what made you want to kind of lean in to an experiment?
It's funny you mentioned that, because when I tell people that I co-host a podcast, and they always ask, like, okay, who do you do it with? And I say, some weird bloke I met on LinkedIn. and he's in America as well. Like, it's quite a bizarre situation. I don't know. I remember the post that I posted that you replied to, and it's quite strange that was before ChatGPT kind of took off, and it was just about saying how I use writing to try and understand some of the Web3 projects and principles that I'm working on, and it just helps me to understand them more by writing about it. And I think you reacted to that because that's how you think about things. And to be honest, I lent into it because not a lot of people do that. Firstly, I mean, not a lot of people take the time and the effort to read what I write, and then to actually write to me saying I feel the same way. So there was that. And then I don't remember what we spoke about that first conversation. Do you remember any of the subjects we actually spoke about in detail?
I think we were both trying to just test our philosophies of Web3 on each other. I think that I found really interesting and compelling just the things that I'd been thinking about regarding this tech, and like how it resonated with you, and just this concept of it being, you know, kind of a dyad, right? Like a dyad, this discourse between two people to figure something out, right? And that I think was my takeaway, more so than anything like hyper specific on the conversation. What about you?
I think that I remember the conversation being quite encompassing. I know we spoke about books and writing a lot, and another reason why I lent into doing this was because I'm a writer and I've got an ego, and I'm sure you have too. And I was like, why aren't writers being more appreciated for their knowledge and understanding of Web3? Why aren't they being asked onto more podcasts? I was like, fuck it, I'm going to build my own podcast. That's another reason why I do it. So, because I think that we do have a little bit of an in-depth, more nuanced, detailed view of some of these things that people seem to be writing about ad nauseam. So yeah, my ego played a part. Going back, I definitely remember books, and whenever I resonate with somebody about books and reading, then let's take it further. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. The idea that I don't know, it's interesting to me. I found the processing my thoughts and ideas through writing didn't land for me until late. You know, I'm 40. What am I? 46. I'll be 47 this year. The maths are more difficult these days, but like in my late 30s, I think is when I first started like seriously, not just journaling, but capturing a consistent practice of journaling and then trying to connect the dots within the journals. And um, I learned that is a freaking superpower if you can figure it out. So much so that's where my project Right to Know You came from, that original first experiment where I actually run people through the idea of committing to daily writing, but also kind of connecting the dots between daily writing to make it make sense in the long term. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
Can I just ask you a question about Right to Know Me? So when you do, if you're working with somebody, I guess it's one-on-one, or maybe you do group sessions as well. But prompts, like what do you use journaling prompts? Do you say, okay, today you're going to write about this, or is it like proper free form, just write?
I'm a big non-prompt guy, and I'll explain why. Prompts are good, but they direct where your writing goes. Specifically, that's what a prompt is. Like you're supposed to write about a certain thing. But what I like to do, and it's largely in groups, and I teach this course at Emory University in Atlanta at their Center of Innovation, and it's usually groups of 15 to 20.
Okay.
But what I do is I try to get them to write without expectation, which is a beautiful superpower to do something without expecting anything in return or what it's going to be. But then I also teach them it's difficult to sit with your own thoughts. It's really hard. So two of the things that I teach them to do is just free form, literally write what you're thinking. So if I'm in there and Mark, you assign me, Mark, Jeremy, you got to write every day for 15 minutes and show me that you did it. I would sit there if I had nothing to write. I would say, well, Mark's making me do this. I'd rather do 9 other things. Why am I sitting here to write when I could be handling more important stuff? And before you know it, the pipes unclog and the nuggets kind of start to come out. So I'm trying to train that capability, that process, instead of like a short, quick, easy button by answering a question.
Okay, it's awesome. So kind of stream of consciousness, right? What comes into your head? I do that most mornings actually before I start, and even if it might just be like a word sometimes, because if I find there's a block, I don't know what to write about. I just like write table or coffee or girlfriend or wife, child, just a word, and then just you go, don't you? And that's when the magic happens and everything deblocks, and before you know it, you've written 8 pages about some delusional project you want to create.
No, that makes me think about Robert Persig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Have you read that book?
I certainly have. Yeah, it's a great book.
So you remember the direction to one of the students when they were trying to write about their town, and she was in this massive writer's block. He basically directed her to like pick a building in the town, pick an area of that building, and pick a brick in that area and write about it. And she ripped off 20 pages, right? And it uncorked it. So it is pretty powerful and cool. So we've been talking about kind of some of the stuff that I do, outside of this podcast and whatever. I'm really curious to dig into the Apocalypse Daddy a little bit and like tell me like what that was kind of a COVID project for you, right? As a dad, is that where it spun up, or what was? Tell me about that a little bit.
Oh, we're going off the Web3 track. Okay.
This is freeform today. And Carlos, great comment, by the way. We're going to jump on that right after this answer the question.
The Apocalypse Daddy. Yeah, that was a COVID moment. I was working in a totally different realm, and I was furloughed, and I had 2 small children and a lot of time on my hands, and it was the end of the world. And so I wrote it was like the journal. It's funny, we were talking about journaling. Essentially, the Apocalypse Daddy started as a daily journal about life in lockdown. And I wanted to just document. I had this impression that I didn't know what was happening, but I knew something extraordinary was happening, like this once in a lifetime. I don't know. I think quite a few people had that sensation, but I knew something was happening. And I just wanted to kind of document it. So instead of journaling, I used it as a blog. I wrote this blog, and it just developed from there. And then after about, I think it's about day 20, after about 20 days, something kind of snapped in my brain. I went a bit crazy, and it went from there.
So again, pointing back to this idea of doing something without expectation of what it will
Yeah.
become, right? It's just like my experiment. And all of a sudden you're in this process and things start to take shape and there's like an interesting form, or you're looking at it's the kitchen stove analogy where you have a bunch of different things going and then something all of a sudden starts smelling really good. And it's like, oh, I can see what this might become, and might do.
Was
So
that how
it,
you kind of, like, you with your right to know you? Did you have an expectation, or was it just something that you felt could help people?
So I did it as a personal experiment to start. So I challenged myself to write for 15 minutes every day without expectation, no writing prompts, no, I wasn't trying to be a writer or anything. And then at the end of the week, I would look through my writing and I would write out an outward facing blog post on what I had kind of connected in my daily writing. I wouldn't share this daily writing chunk with anybody. So I could be as crazy as I wanted to there. But then I would kind of translate my thoughts into something that I ended up calling synthesis. It's like this coalescing of thoughts and ideas. I put it out on a blog. I called it 52 Musings, where I would do it once a week for 52 weeks. The experiment continued for 82 weeks, and I learned more about myself than I ever had in my entire life. And I was telling my buddy about it, he goes, "You need to do this for other people." I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, he's like, "Yeah, you need to help other people do this." I'm like, "Well, I guess that could be cool." He's like, "When are you doing it?" "Oh, probably next year." He goes, "No, what are you doing tomorrow to do it?" And I was like, "Oh, damn, he's on me, right?"
Yeah, he's on
Um,
your.
but we need a good kick in the ass every now and
Yeah.
again. And I did it and I launched it with a group and I stepped back and I was like, holy cow, like what is happening with this group? What is happening with these people is mind blowing. And I kept doing it. And the experiment, the groups got bigger and then people started paying for it, which like blew my mind. And then, I started teaching it at a very prominent university in Atlanta. But it started out with just some batshit crazy experiment, kind of like what we're doing with this, right? Like we don't know what
Well,
it's going to be.
well, I'm going to bring that back round then to kind of, since we're on that kind of theme of doing something without expectation, and if you bring that back down to a lot of the episodes we've done and a lot of the platforms and the people we've spoken to, the communities who are backing these platforms, and I'm in them myself, and I'm working for no money without expectation. And there are quite a lot of people doing the same thing. And 90%, probably more, of these projects are going to go nowhere. And the only reward is going to be personal to the people who are doing them, whether that's writing or music or film or some of the things we've been looking at. And I think that doing something for nothing is really one of the most culturally exciting things I see in Web3, is that people really are passionate about the opportunities of what it can do for creativity and curiosity. And I don't know if you've seen the same thing, but
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I've jumped into DAOs and projects and all of that, and there's no financial remuneration in many of them. But what it is like I'm learning, I'm understanding, I'm getting to explore and share my ideas and help shape something, whether or not it comes to fruition or not. But this actually is a great question that just popped up. And Carlos, I promise to get back to your comment because I think it's super important what you're saying. But Tom just put in the chat that very applicable to this line of discussion. He says, "What are the risks of batshit crazy experiments, and when do you pull the plug?" Um,
the answer to that question is in this book,
oh, is
Tom.
that
If
is that
this
the
is
Rick Rubin book?
Yeah, the creative way, the act of being, like he speaks about that very question, and how your mindset and how you model your work and your creativity, you will find the answer in that. You have to look at your life work as a body of work, and when what are the risks? The risks, there aren't any risks if you pull the plug.
So
When you have to.
I absolutely. So here's another comment on that and how I approach it too. And that Rick Rubin book is on deck. I love his philosophies and I've listened to him talk about a lot of things. But knowing when to pull the plug, I pull the plug on things when I'm no longer powered by my curiosity. Right? If it becomes a slog and it becomes like a have to, and not a want to, especially when there's no money involved, because I've got 4 kids. I know, Mark, you've got a couple of kids, and we money kind of makes the world go round in a lot of ways. It's not the ultimate, but it's one of the things that you have to feed the machine. So if my curiosity is not being fed, and my desire to learn and teach and all of these other principles that I have for myself, that's when I know, yeah, this is definitely becoming a have to and a want to. And some have tos, the balance can be, kind of set when there's some financial in there, because we all take projects, that aren't necessarily the end all be all for ourselves, but the trade-off is money. So Tom, that's how I evaluate when to pull the plug. And this experiment is still feeding.
I've got a question for Tom on that. How do you know when a batshit crazy experiment is no longer batshit crazy, and that batshit crazy experiment is now actually a really, really good idea that's developed beyond that? How do you know that? Maybe that's a more interesting question. Like, how do you know when it's not batshit crazy anymore?
While we're waiting on Tom to respond to that in the chat, there's Peter Diamandis is an author and an investor, and he's got a book called Bold and Abundance, and he always talks about game changing, and I'm going to paraphrase, like, game changing ideas are batshit crazy until they aren't, right? It's a crazy idea until all of a sudden it changes the world in a way, right? Mm-hmm. So crazy ideas start outside systems, right? Start outside the constructs of normal systems. And normal systems look at batshit crazy ideas and go, well, that's very counter to all of the stuff that we do. And that's why this system exists. So we need to keep that pushed out there. But then slowly, one person nods their head, 2 people nod their heads, 5 people are going, this sounds like a really good thing. And that idea maybe turns into an experiment, or turns into a proof of concept or a pilot or something. And as long as that momentum is sustained, I think it starts to evolve into something more sustainable.
I agree. Yeah.
Let's chat about Carlos's idea. I'm going to try this. Ooh, look at this.
Oh, look at that. Wow.
Hey. Yeah. So Carlos talks about interactions helping him understand, meaning that, not just writing, but interacting with other people through comments and writing is super key and super important. I would agree with that. And actually, not to keep going back to this right to know you, I promise I'm not shilling my program right now, but the second stage of the daily writing and the synthesis involves interacting with other people's synthesis post. And that's where the magic happens, where people like Carlos might be like, Jeremy, I ran across the exact same thing 2 years ago. Here's how I handled it. I'm like, oh man, that's amazing. You saved me 18 months of heartache because my idea is off base, right? So Carlos, I think that's super cool. Super cool. Mark, any thoughts on Carlos's note there?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I like that last thing you said, where you saved him 18 months of work, or 18 months of experimentation, or 18 months down the wrong path. And that kind of speaking to people, learning from other people's experiences is vital. It reminded me of Farnham Street, and I'm sure, I don't know if you know.
Oh, Shane Parrish.
Yeah. Shane Parrish and the Knowledge Project. And like the Knowledge Project, their byline is kind of learning from other people's mistakes and experiments. And it reminded me of that. And I think it's a very powerful tool that you've hit upon.
Nice. And going back, looks Tom did his homework. So thanks for the response there. Yeah. So financial metric on those ideas.
That's what you said.
Yeah. But if you're having fun, then the crazy aspect of that kind of goes away. Then it has some validity, right? Like I was talking about, it feeding my curiosity or feeding my personal energy stores. I think that's really cool, Tom. I like that a lot.
And there's a lot of value in fun.
Like, oh,
personally, I place most of my value on fun. Is like when I'm writing, 90% of my time is on having fun, and when I'm not working, like I'm having fun. And yeah, there's a lot to be said for that.
All right, so my volume.com listeners, my YouTube listeners, the LinkedIn interaction is kicking your butts right now. So if you want to jump in and make yourself aware, feel free to do the same.
Let's do some work, Jeremy.
Yeah, let's do it. So okay, so we touched on this a little bit. I'm gonna poke and prod on your answer to my previous question of like why you decided to stay in it and why you decided to kind of put your time and energy into this project. And I know we both feed this project with great energy, and we both do it without expectation, and it just kind of works. Like I never go, what's Mark doing today to build this business? And you're hopefully not going, Jeremy better get off his ass and, add some value here, right? But like specifically the website, like you put a lot of time and energy into designing this, like this shingle, so to speak, for the thing that we're trying to build. What flipped in your head to say, I'm going to put a bunch of time and energy into showing what this thing looks like for the world?
Well, I'm not that altruistic. So that there is so for the website skill set, I guess if you want to look at the measurable things, I do it. Okay, I enjoy doing it. One of the things that I've started looking at is copywriting, like marketing and sales copy. Like I'm a creative writer at heart, like a journalist, creative writer, but I've been doing more copywriting and kind of trying to learn about sales copy. And this was a good training ground to do that, for one. Two, one of those, I'm very stubborn, and when I start something and if I think it's got somewhere to go, then sunken fallacy cost, sunken cost, whatever it is, I'm all for that. So but more than that, I think we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing something that isn't, and I always like that. I always like the whole point of my existence is to do things which aren't run of the mill, which aren't conventional. And I think we are doing something different for Web3. It's interesting and I believe in it. And so the more time I spend speaking to these people, the more time I spend working with you on thinking on paper, the more I think we should keep going. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah.
Let's lean into you, Jeremy.
Damn it. I was trying to put the spotlight on you, Mark. Did my best to prepare for that, but no, I'm the same way as you. I love, like, one of my a few of my principles that came out of this original writing experiment that I did a while back was this like time and energy matrix, right? And it was literally like the principles of allocating my personal time and energy. And it, to me, it's not just time, it's time plus energy, because time without energy is useless. All you can do is nap, right? So if you have time and energy, that's the good thing, right? So a couple things that, if we look at my formal energy matrix, one of the things I want to do is I want to learn and I want to teach, right? This gives me an awesome opportunity to do both, right? To share my perspective, to help coalesce and synthesize the perspective of other people, to ask questions, to kind of get this general sense making. So that box is checked. All right. I literally have, this is verbatim, like my energy matrix. Number two is, well, not necessarily in this order, but I want to build cool shit with amazing people. I would consider thinking on paper cool shit, and I would consider you an amazing person. So those are a very tactical answer to your question.
Well, I can't deny either of those two claims. Yeah, I'm cool and this is cool, and yeah, it's a good answer.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's keep going. I have a few things that, and I know we want to tease out a couple of next steps because we're building this thing. The whole show is called Building in Public. You guys are now listening and seeing us as if we're in a conference room trying to put together not necessarily a business, but a concept, taking it through to fruition. And it's the messy middle, if you will. But like, I started thinking about this one thing today, Mark, that, is what we're doing, is thinking on paper, is it content, or is it a community, or is it both?
I was sorry. I was sideswiped by the word content because I have such a love-hate relationship with this word that kind of might hijack my brain for a moment. It's both. I think we're providing an insight into some very special and different guests, so the content is there. And I think the same or growing number of people show up every week. I think they resonate with how we view things. And so it's a community in that regard. And I think maybe the ideas that we have that we're about to talk about. So I will say the words book club, open table, not table, a round table. I think they serve the community and add to the content.
It seems like you're tap dancing around my question in a way, but I also definitely appreciate your perspective. They're connected, right? They're connected. Tom says community. I appreciate that, because like the question, it really is for the people listening. Like, do you guys see this as something bigger than just content, right? And, you know, Carlos chimed in again, like it's about interaction, right? So the interaction that we have with you all in the chat, the interaction that we have with the guests, the roundtable / town hall. So we have this new concept. I guess we can let the cat out of the bag, Mark.
Yeah, I think we should. I think it's a good, damn mighty fine concept.
I do too. And so the idea, guys, is we're going back to all of our guests, and Mark sent out a note to everybody saying, what would you think about all of us getting on a town hall, a call all together, where we can, we have a very specific agenda. We'll have each person brings a couple of questions, and we try and unpack collectively as this group of previous guests to unpack some of those questions and share perspectives. And what was really cool to me, Mark, like almost immediately, every single, probably 90% of our guests almost near immediately said, hell yes. Right. And that was really interesting to me. How did you feel about all of that?
I was very happy that everybody said yes. And like you said, it was almost immediate. I think maybe 20 people now, about 20 guests, and they all agreed to come on. They all agreed that they'd bring a couple of questions. And I think it'll be an awesome experience. Like, we'll curate it. They can bring any question they like, as long as it's about emerging tech and Web3. So it can be controversial. They can just defend their ideas, get into an argument, do what they want, and we'll kind of manage it. Administration question: where are we going to do it? What do you think is the best platform to have 20 people talking about emerging tech in one place?
I think the best way to do it is at the, you know, Thinking on Paper live event in the French Alps. But barring budget and travel concerns, I think I think we could do. Zoom has a bunch of Zoom can hold like more guests than, I think we're limited. Not to get too in the weeds, but Restream I think can only have 10 max together. So if anyone,
we could do 2. I mean, if it's easier from a technical point of view, we could do 2, divide it 10-10. That way we can stream it live. I don't know how people aren't going to click on Zoom links and come to a Zoom meeting and observe, are they, in the same numbers that they'll come here? Maybe they will. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. If anyone in the comments has experience or been, you know, doing live event production, or has any tips and tricks, would definitely be open to that. But to me, Mark, it seems like the 10 and 10 might be the play. Carlos says Zoom and break rooms. Okay. Kind of Zoom and spinning off into smaller cohorts. Yeah, that could be interesting too, I think.
And then just send out a viewing link, so you have a non-participatory audience who can just watch.
Could be. Tom asked a great question. Given the title of our show today is Building in Public, I'm gonna throw this up there for everyone, because I got a chuckle out of it too. What is being built? That is a great question, Tom.
Well, what's been built here is the future of the Thinking on Paper Web3 in an emerging tech media enterprise podcast.
There you go. And I think to me, it goes back. I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's like, it's this content community kind of thing. And in the community piece of it, like, how can we open up interaction beyond what we see in the live chats and beyond what we would see happening in, you know, emails or guest recommendations or something like that? It goes back to the bidirectional value exchange. Let's put our money where our mouth is. Like, how could we make TOP something that delivers value in both ways directly to listeners?
I think that, as Carlos mentioned in the chat, the most value comes from speaking and tapping the minds of other people. Or that's the quickest way to get something valuable in this, in what we're doing in this space. So I think that having the town hall will give that. I mean, these aren't incredible new ideas. I mean, we're talking about having a book club, kind of a 20, 30 invite only people to come to a book club, one book a month, and about emerging tech. And we all read the same book at the same speed. And at the end of each month, if you're in, then we have something like the town hall, but we all meet and we kind of throw ideas around what we learn about this book. Maybe have a Discord channel where we can talk about ideas and quotes from the book, what we're learning from it, what we agree with, what they don't agree with, and then kind of that sharing of ideas around a single book.
So I'm a big reader. I have probably 2 or 3 books going at once at any one given time, and it's super helpful to chat about a book with someone else that's read the book, but also someone that actually gives a shit about unpacking what they've learned, right? Because if you
which is our community, our audience, I think they do give a shit about reading and unpacking and thinking a little bit deeper on these subjects.
Right. So how do you how would you start something like that, Mark? What would you do to kick it off?
I'd use a very, very Web3 emerging tech solution for that. I would use, I mean, ideally you'd want an NFT-gated reading community, but instead we don't have the time to do all that. So we'll just do it by email, invite only. Maybe, how about, okay, why don't we invite all our old guests if they want to join, and then add like 10 spaces or 15 spaces for the community to come into it. Because some of our guests will say no, they won't have the time. Maybe get a nice curated audience of 20, 25 people, which we use LinkedIn or email to curate, and choose the book. Maybe how we choose the book, that's an interesting question, and then go from there.
I like that, but I want to somehow kind of infiltrate this whole emerging tech concept, right? Because like if we could be an open experiment for use cases and how things come together, it could be interesting. But like, I've coded one smart contract in my entire life, and it was the most basic version ever. And I did it just because I wanted to jump into Solidity and figure it out. Like there was a course that I did. You don't want me coding a smart contract. I'm pretty sure you're, on the dev side, that's not something we want to put in your lab.
Doesn't ChatGPT do that these days? Can't we get it to write us some code?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't know about that. But if there's someone listening out there right now that is a Web3 developer that wants to lean into some projects, has some chops, and wants to kind of work on them a little bit.
But what are you suggesting with this? And to create an NFT gated something? Like, what are you thinking?
I don't think it's like from a money perspective. I think it's I wonder if, and I've been kind of
give it away. Do it on Polygon. You give it away.
Totally, but also have some meaning to the token, right? So I think of like a soulbound token. I know that's kind of an older term, and new things have kind of come up in recent. But like, what if your interactions, going back to what Carlos said, what if your interactions accrue value, right? So how many times you actually read the book, how many times you actually participate, how many times some of the takeaways from your participation, lead to something interesting. I mean, tracking all of that could be crazy, but like, but if some sort of, badge
pass, let's call it a pass. Let's not call it a token. Let's call it a pass.
Yeah. Well, yeah, whatever it is. That could be interesting.
Do you think that monetizing it is a good idea? Because essentially you're like interact to earn, read to earn kind of.
Yeah, I think the money thing is kind of challenging, right? It's I think about it in two different ways because again, we are always talking about the beauty of doing things without expectation. But then there's the realities of sustaining something longer term with the time and energy matrix, right? As long as other things are feeding it as well. But sometimes there's got to be the financial piece into the puzzle. So is it something like that, or this is a nice segue too. We've been approached by a few different companies from a sponsorship perspective, right? And that's something that can go a couple of different ways. Obviously, I would never get into a situation where I'm, kind of, shilling and pitching something just because, we get money for it. But if it's connected to what we're doing, if it's something in our audience ecosystem of interest, and something that we would use, right? I mean, I don't know. What do you think about all that? I'm not fully decided on it quite
I
yet.
think me and you are both exactly on the same page for that. I think that if we did ever do that, it would have to be analogous to what we believe and what we work in and what we think. Otherwise, we don't even need to go there. I think we're on the same page.
Question to those in the chat and listening. What would you think of? Would you think of Thinking on Paper any differently if episodes were brought to you by something X, Y, and Z? I'd be curious to know that.
Well, me personally, I'm doing some writing, which I for Storyverse. I mean, if we had Storyverse on, for example, or Storyco or Quest of Evolution again, I would be totally, if they want to sponsor the show, I'd be happy with that. But I think that if it was some kind of DeFi protocol, I don't think that would resonate with me and you exactly. I think that would be a bit of more of a clash.
It's not in the palette of the technological palette of what we're exploring, right? Of what we're trying to, kick around in this. Yeah. Lot to think about. And this is all fun and a great discussion to kind of have to figure out where we go. I mean, needlessly, or not needlessly, but regardless of this discussion, I'm still super excited to continue unpacking new tech with a new guest every week. And you mentioned the idea of seasons, Mark. What which kind of makes it, I guess, less daunting to where we can have a break and then kind of jump back in fresh versus, kind of staying. Shows do it differently, right? There are shows that are weeklies. There are shows that come out in chunks of 10 or 12. What are your thoughts there?
That was more born from the realities of you live in America, I live in France. We both have kids. There's holidays coming up. So that wasn't anything philosophical. That was just like the practicality of it is during the summer, it's going to be at times more difficult. I'm up for continuing and kind of like going through. And then if we have to postpone or move shows on any given Thursday, then cool with that. Perhaps we could do seasons which aren't time restricted, but are content. So we do a metaverse season and then a music season and then a DeFi season or a tech season where the seasons are about subject rather than a time dictated. Going back to that might be dictated by guests. So I think we need to think about what kind of guests we want to approach to get on the show, kind of what level of guests, what they work in, what they do, what do we not want, who do we not want to have on, things like that. I think we need to iron out that as well.
Yeah, I would agree. Going back to the earlier question, I'm going to throw Carlos up here again, the super user today. As long as advertising is topical and you don't have to endorse them, I'd be okay. I think that's kind of along the lines of what we're thinking as well. And appreciate all the interaction and feedback today, Carlos, on that. I think that's interesting. And so let's move to guests, right? So we've had a variety of guests. We've had kind of builders. We've had kind of philosophers a little bit, like people who are trying to you know, figure out where this new world's going and what's out there to drive us there. We've had marketers, we've had technical people like, you know, Keir Finlow Bates. Like, that was such an amazing conversation because I'd watched so many videos of his, and his perspective is super technical in the blockchain world, and even tying in the old database stuff, right? And difference versus the other. I wonder how, for those in the chat and those listening, would you prefer more technical conversations? Are we going deep enough technically, or are we in kind of the right, just enough tech to understand how the world works? Because I think if we go too tech, it's an entirely different audience, right?
It's a balancing act for sure. I mean, we have to, for us personally, I think that as we progress, we want to know more about the tech. Like, we want to deep dive on the tech itself, but then you have to be aware. We have to be aware of our audience and how technical do they want to get. You could have Thinking on Paper Tech Tuesdays where we just focus exclusively on tech, or have a season where we get some developers from 6 different blockchains and we talk to them about tech and how it works and how we learn more. The ideas there. What do you think?
That's a really cool idea, because you could be more pointed about what's happening on that show. That way, if someone that's super technical, it might appeal to them to really dig into the nuances of smart contracts, or the nuances of of nodes, and the network side of things. That could be super interesting. Let's see.
Yeah.
Deep. Ooh, Tom, I like that a lot. Deep dive, but with hand holding. That's a really cool idea, right? So kind of the tech information comes out, but maybe we kind of help synthesize it, help coalesce the information into digestible outputs. That's the stuff I like doing anyway. I've been doing stuff like that for a while, but that's great feedback. Yeah.
I agree.
So we've got like a minute or two left. The interaction's been awesome in the chat, everybody. What is one topic, or what are some topics that we have missed that we definitely need to be talking about? And while you guys are thinking and answering that question, Mark, I'm going to flip it to you. And what's a question you've always wanted to ask me, but were a little scared to?
You know me by now, Jay. I'm not really scared to ask. Let me think about that. What would I want to know? I've been talking to you every week now. When did we start this? I don't know, like 4 or 5 months ago, maybe longer, maybe less. Like, I'd like to know more about what makes Jeremy tick outside of work, and I think I'm kind of building a picture of that. So maybe if you, what's your favorite? Your hobby or what pastime do you spend the most time doing outside of writing and music?
That's probably easy. That's lacrosse.
Okay, outside. I knew you were going to say that. Okay, not lacrosse.
I thought you were going to ask me. I've got a little injury right here on my face. I don't know if you can see it.
I thought that was my screen.
No. Your screen is plenty clean. For those of you just listening, I've got a nice little mark on my face. I was at lacrosse practice this past week. Towards the end of practice, I turned and got hit by a ball, but not direct hit. It kind of hit my sunglasses and knocked down. But you know how faces are? Like, any faces in your head, like whenever you get hit in the head, it just bleeds like a sieve. So there were like 5 or 10 minutes left in practice. And I was like, it wasn't hurt. I knew he didn't need any stitches, but I kept at it. And the kids were looking at me, and these guys are like 4th and 5th graders. And I'm just like bleeding like a freaking warrior that got, and they're just like, dude, are you okay? I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. I got blood on my shirt anyway. But that's a little nugget, whether you wanted to know it or not.
What books had the most profound impact on your life?
Ooh, great question. And I think I have it here.
By coincidence, there it is.
No, I have it. No, it's upstairs. So a book called Total Freedom by Jiddu Krishnamurti. It was a kind of a Indian philosopher and spiritual leader back in the day, kind of a non-denominational. He started out in a very religious sect and then was like, hey, my philosophy on all religion is that religion is here. It's not someone telling you what to do, what to be. It's understanding who you are, and that religions, and this is a deeper discussion, but from his perspective, religions were based on 2 innate human principles, fear and the need for security. And when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, like that was very counter to a lot of the things that society talks about and a lot of the things that I grew up learning and understanding. But Total Freedom, Jiddu Krishnamurti, 100% recommended. It's a big, thick read, but it'll blow your mind.
Okay, I will buy it after that. For me, okay, for me, that was a very different answer that I would give. So for me, those kind of 2 books. Since let's be personal for a moment. So when I was about 14 or so, 15, I went on a holiday with my family, and we actually drove from England to Italy. It's like a 1.5 day drive or something. And at the time, like, I wasn't a massive reader, and I had The Beach, like Alec Garland's The Beach, and I had Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and I read them both in the journey to there and the way back. Like, didn't stop, 26 hours, just like read. And ever since that they were the books that had the most profound impact on me, because I just read every day after that.
So that was a catalyst. And it wasn't necessarily the subject matter all by itself, but something about those 2 books got you in
timing. It was the timing. Yeah.
Well, here's how that feeds me. All of your Hunter S. Thompson references lately in your post and all of that. I actually bought what is it? The Rum Diary?
Yeah, the Rum Diary.
I got it yesterday. I'm going to read it on vacation because of some of the things that you've been writing about. So I thank you for that.
That was his first book that he wrote, and he was very young when he wrote that. And it's when I read that, I just thought, fuck, I wasn't like that when I was 21.
Oh, amazing. Well, hey, we are now over on time. I want to just, this has been fun, Mark. I appreciate this jazz session that we had today. And I really appreciate those watching out there and interacting. It's really awesome to see that, like, what we're doing and what we're trying to build is resonating. And we are always definitely open to suggestions, whether it's a guest, whether it's a topic, whether it's structure or something we could do to build this community. Always reach out to us. You can get us on LinkedIn. You can get us through the website. I think the emails are up there. But we appreciate you and appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this every week. Mark, any closing thoughts?
I started this episode. I was nervous. I said, like, that was the first thing.
Oh, how's your heart rate? Let's check it out.
It's gone way down. I'm really relaxed and chilled. So
perfect.
Brilliant. See you next week with a guest.
Thanks for listening, guys. Talk soon. Take it easy.